discussion right now whether or not Bitcoin's block size should be increased to a bigger size, basically doubling the size, even more. Think about it, the last time that this happened, this was not an insignificant debate among the Bitcoiners of the world. You know, developers and proponents of Bitcoin in general were very much split along different interests, along different lines, as to whether or not we should increase the size of the block. Now, on one hand, technology improves, computer efficiencies improve, devices have more memory, more storage space, faster processing speeds and capabilities. And so therefore it makes a lot of sense from a technological point of view to say, okay, well, if the whole world has seen this revolution of technology continuing to increase at remarkable speeds, and we're able to transfer information faster and faster, more and more of it, then it makes sense that we would increase the size of the Bitcoin blocks. On the other hand, just because it's a worldwide revolution doesn't mean literally everyone in the world has taken advantage or has benefited from this revolution of faster and faster speeds on their devices. Right? There are still people buying USB 1 devices for their USB keys, USB 2, USB 2 older versions. Right? There are still people storing information on slow computers. I know it's hard to believe, but it's true. There are still people storing information on old, slow phones that are 10 years old or older. I know it's hard to believe, but it's true. And the whole point of Bitcoin is supposedly to be the, quote, the people's coin. Right? We keep hearing that. It's kind of nonsense at this point when most of the coins are owned by, banks and whales. Right? And other large institutions and governments. It's not really the people's coin anymore. But in theory, technologically, mathematically, it could be. It is. In theory. So what does that mean? Well, that means that the protocol should be as accessible as possible. Right? As globally accessible as possible. Which means, you might be able to get higher speeds out of it, but that would immediately remove more of the people who actually are the people when speaking about the people's coin. Right? So the moment you increase that benchmark and say, now we've got the ability to do bigger block sizes, right? Then you immediately remove access from potentially millions or more people who don't have the latest and greatest or just even relatively new technology. Right? So it may be harder for them, much harder, to take advantage of this opportunity. They might be not able to scrape together $100 to buy 0.002 Bitcoin, right? But maybe they can get, a couple dollars a day or $1 a day of it. But then suddenly you make their barrier to entry significantly higher, because now you're saying the block sizes are double the size. Now, but this presents a serious problem also. Again, you need to do the research and see how many people will actually be affected. I don't mean just of active wallets, but of people that potentially will access this network over the coming years. maybe decade. And why do you have to look so far out? Why can't we just say, well, who are the people who are using it today? Because the people who are using it today are relatively early adopters. They're still early adopters, yes. 15 years is a relatively early adopting point in the history of what will be Bitcoin's history. Right? You need to look out 25, 50 years into the future and see how many people will actually have better technology in their hands in that time that they can use Bitcoin if we double or triple the size of the block. And then you also have to look at the consideration of the Bitcoin miners, right? On the one hand, great, you made the blocks double the size. Users are happy. Maybe they'll use the network more and there'll be more transactions or bigger transactions. But I don't mean bigger in value, I mean bigger in terms of information being stored. But from the perspective of a miner, now you suddenly reduced, essentially, their effective earnings per block by 50% or more, right? If you double the block size, you're doubling what they have to carry for the same amount of money. Now that's, again, maybe consumers will be happy about that because you're reducing essentially the amount that they will pay by half, effectively. But more so that Bitcoin payments are already fairly low. They're not like ETH payments. Yes, there was a week when payments spiked in April after the halving because people were going nuts with these runes and things. Okay, and then it settled back down to normal. Bitcoin prices are nowhere near Ethereum prices in terms of transaction fees. Right? We just saw recently somebody sent $4.3 billion of Bitcoin for a whopping $2.82. Okay? Try sending $4.3 billion on Ethereum and see how much it's going to cost you. I guarantee you it's not going to be $2.82. So there are considerations, right? If miners have invested however much they've invested in their mining rigs or facilities, right? Warehousing, security, electricity, storage, whatever, water, cooling, etc. All those things, lights, all those things cost real resources. And now you decide, oh, we're going to double the block size. But these miners have already invested in a network in order to support the existing block size. Right? Yes, there's the understanding things can change. And they do. Right? Block size was already increased. But it caused a huge, massive rift lines in the Bitcoin community for a significant period of time. Arguably, it's still ongoing. Even though the issues were resolved, but they weren't resolved unanimously. There are still to this day people who argue that it was a mistake. It was unnecessary. It didn't really help much. And there are people who this day think, it was a very good thing to do. And there are times when it's, smart to change a protocol. And there are times when it's smart to leave the protocol as it is. And these are questions that we who are in the Bitcoin community face. All of us, including you. Even if you're not involved in the discussions on boards with, any of the thought leaders, right? Doesn't matter. You're still part of the discussion, even if you just tweet about it or write a blog about it or make a video or whatever. You share your opinion. Maybe somebody else will stumble across it and see it and have an insight, learn something. Why does it matter? Any of this, right? It matters because if we make the accessible coin less and less accessible, if you make the people's coin less and less the people's coin, then it no longer is. And if you tell me, well, it's going to have more value if we increase the block size, again, that's coming from the perspective of somebody who cares about its speculative value more than its real world user value per person. Why do I say that? Well, because, listen, if you're a really big whale and you hold a lot of money, I don't care what currency it's in, you really don't need Bitcoin to get richer. You're just gonna get richer with Bitcoin. But if Bitcoin never went above 100 grand, in fact, if it crashed down to 20, never went, if it fell down to 10 and never went above 10 grand again, you know what? It would still be as useful today as it will be 10 years from now, right? If it stayed forever at 10 grand. As long as people accept it, it has a value and a use. Will people not accept if it is 10 grand a coin? Really? I don't believe that for a second. Will a lot of whales, be financially hurt that they invested a lot of money into it when it was 40, 50, 60, 70 K a coin and it goes down to 10 grand? Yeah, probably a lot of them will. Probably a lot of them will sell. Right? And that's what will drive the prices so low. They won't fall magically. If you tell the world, yeah, no, we're not upgrading this technology, it could very easily fall to relatively low prices again. Maybe 5 grand, maybe 3 grand again, maybe less. I'm not against that. I'm not against that at all. I don't care what the price is. As a trader, prices are moot. All I care about is the percentages of the returns, right? On any given trade. That's all I care about. As a Bitcoin holder, I really don't care what the price is. Yes, in some respect, as an investor, you want prices to go up, of course, in the long term. But as a person who's a Bitcoiner more than an investor in Bitcoin, like in the sense of, Bitcoin to me, the technology is more important than whatever my investment in it might be. Okay? What do I mean by that? I mean, it is an asset that is actually globally important as long as we treat it that way. It has massive potential as long as we treat it that way. Right? It can actually change the world in many ways as long as we treat it that way. The moment we stray from that path and we begin to make Bitcoin an inaccessible, exclusive, members-only kind of thing, where you have to have a certain financial, amount in your portfolio to even consider buying any of it, it's not interesting as a world device. It's not the world-changing device. Then it's just an asset for the rich to play with, and who cares? Right? It won't be the global, world-changing, superpower cryptocurrency once it becomes just a playground for the rich And everyone else, especially the poor, will be locked out of it. The whole point of it is to remove barriers that are unnecessary and, frankly, that hurt the poor more than anybody else. Now, of course, if you're financially well off, you know that the barriers of the current system of fiat, etc., can be quite expensive, even for you. You might have to pay $1,000 when you move $1 million or whatever, or $10,000 or whatever. It can be quite expensive. You might have to pay more, right? And Bitcoin circumvents that. And that's one of the reasons you appreciate Bitcoin. And you have value to it. You assign value to it. But think about the people who live on $2 a day or $1 a day. And that considers them to be above poverty. Think about them and what impact it will have on their lives, good and bad, if you change the protocol. On the one hand, yes, it means they can transfer twice as much information per block. But on the other hand, it also means that they have to have technology that's twice as powerful just to participate. And if the device is then only becoming more and more of a device for those with higher means, then think of the consequences and repercussions when it locks out more and more of those people who don't have those means. And that's it for now. We'll zip to it later. Happy Bitcoining.